The 10 core myths of narcissistic recovery, reframed through input. Each one of the following myths originates from oversimplified or distorted narratives in the narcissistic abuse recovery space. Input corrects them by grounding survivors in symbolic truth, internal reality, and structural collapse mechanisms. Myth 1. Claim you fail for a narcissist because you lacked boundaries. The correction via input. You were identified and mirrored by the narcissist's cold empathy scan, not due to poor boundaries, but because you carried an unmet symbolic need. The narcissist did not bypass a limit, they infiltrated a wound. What failed was not your outer boundary, but your internal symbolic containment. You were not naive, you were co-opted by a libidinal overture, engineered to reflect your internal deficit. Myth 2. Claim it happened because you're codependent or overly empathic. Correction via input. You weren't too kind or too enmeshed. You were converted. Narcissistic collapse happens through reflexive mirrored psychic inversion, RMPI, a total collapse of self-other boundaries via mirrored trauma. The narcissist did not attach to you, they inhabited you. Empath and codependent are insufficient terms, and empath isn't a term at all. What occurred was psychic inversion, catalyzed by an unmet object hunger and mirrored idealization. Myth 3. Claim you should have seen the red flags. The correction via input. Red flags are not visible when your anticipatory stress reflex, ASR2, is already activated, when the body is primed for collapse and the psyche is scanning for rescue. The narcissist's performance of idealization is misread as safety. You did not fail to notice warning signs. You were engaged in unconscious survival via symbolic fusion. There were no flags, only illusions of repair. Myth 4. Claim narcissism is genetic or a fixed brain disorder. The correction via input. This framing disables the survivor's insight by removing narcissism from the relational and symbolic field. Narcissistic structures arise not simply from neurobiology, but from profound symbolic rupture in early object relational development. To call it genetic is to erase the failed gaze, the absent object, the unmet mirroring, and the resultant internal split. You were not abused by DNA. You were entangled with a structurally fragmented psyche, enacting a shared fantasy. Myth 5. Claim going no contact will heal you. Correction via input. No contact is a law, but it is not sufficient. The narcissist is no longer external. The introjected gaze remains, looping internally through ASR3 collapse dynamics. The object relationship survives within the symbolic system of the survivor long after physical separation. Recovery requires more than absence. It requires symbolic extraction, the dissolution of the internalized shared fantasy, and reauthoring of the self. Myth 6. Claim gaslighting is a narcissistic tool for control. Correction from input and the psychological field. This mischaracterizes narcissism and confuses it with psychopathy. Narcissists engage in confabulation. They do not consciously lie to manipulate, but rather construct self-preserving realities they believe. The survivor is not destroyed by intentional deceit, but by the absence of coherence. The damage arises from the missing symbolic context, the unbearable blank space left where reality should have been held together. This is not gaslighting, it is collapse driven distortion. Myth 7. Once you're strong or aware enough, you won't be triggered again. Correction via input. You cannot override collapse with willpower. ASR3 is not a matter of trigger management. It is a complete symbolic override of the self. The survivor is trapped in a looping paracosmic theatre of gaze seeking, internal object mimicry, and false self simulation. Strength is not the solution. Symbolic integration is. Until the fractured internal world is reassembled, repetition will occur, not due to weakness but due to unresolved psychic inversion. Myth 8. Claim they discarded you because you became boring or stopped feeding them. Correction via input. You were not discarded. You were annihilated. The moment your presence mirrored back anything resembling truth, fatigue, or need, the narcissist's fragile construct collapsed and you were expelled. The discard was not a punishment, it was a collapse of their ability to uphold the fantasy. You did not stop performing, you became real. That reality could not be sustained within their split object structure. Myth 9. Healing is about learning to love yourself more. Input correction. Self love cannot reach the true self if it remains symbolically sealed. ASR3 renders the authentic self unreachable. What is being loved in that state is often the false self structure. Healing begins not with affection, but with recognition. You must first see what collapsed, name it, and reconstruct internal coherence. Only then can love be metabolized. Sentiment without structure is bypass. Myth 10. Claim you need to forget them and move on. Correction via input. The narcissist has become internalized. They are no longer someone else. The shared fantasy has colonized your symbolic field. Attempts to forget the narcissist will fail because they were never properly seen in the first place, only mirrored. Moving on requires more than behavioral shift. It requires symbolic rupture. The recognition that you are trapped in an internal theatre, still responding to a gaze that no longer exists. Each one of these myths fails because it speaks to behaviour, cognition, or personality, but the wound lies in symbolic collapse. The survivor is not navigating interpersonal issues, they are surviving internal fragmentation. MPIT corrects the record. Recovery is not about healing a relationship, it is about resurrecting a self lost inside it. Peace out. Loads of love.